Hey, welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman. I'm a perseverance coach and a professional speaker who is stuttering and mumbling at the moment. Really impressive, huh? Anyway, I'm in this line of work because I'm fascinated with the idea that we each can turn our unique challenges into gifts. And that often takes some creativity, a lot of doing, and a lot of perseverance. My guest today, speaking of such things, she helps an amazing group of people to persevere and find creative solutions in their lives. So with that, we'll be back in a sec. Nope, not at all. With that, we'll be back in a sec. Take two on that.
Today's guest, Mary Barinka.
Hey, welcome back. I'm deeply inspired by Mary Barinka. Not only did she notice a gap in the services her Minnesota community offered, but had the vision and determination to bring together an amazing group of people to fill it. The program she's been instrumental in creating is so successful it was featured in the Washington Post. Mary has lived in Austin, Minnesota for 30 years. Fun fact, Austin, Minnesota is home of Hormel, which makes a variety of foods, including spam. And I have a can of spam around here somewhere, but I don't know what it is. So I mean, that would have been better if I just held it up and I was prepared for that, but I wasn't. She and her husband Tim have 3 adult daughters, the youngest of whom was diagnosed with autism at age 2. After many years of advocacy, acquiring knowledge and experience supporting her daughter, she took a unique position in Austin as Community Autism Resource Specialist. In 2017, she leads an innovative initiative called Autism Friendly Austin. Autism Friendly Austin, that's great, to increase understanding and support for those living with autism. Please, without further ado, welcome Mary Barinka. Yay! How are you, Mary?
Fabulous. Just great to be here. How are you, Jason?
I'm really good too. Really good. So thanks for being here. I'd love to start off a little bit when people were kids and asked this question. When you were 7 or 8 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I wanted to have my own comedy variety show like Carol Burnett.
You did? How fun is that?
I did. I used to spend Friday nights at my grandma's house and watch Carol Burnett with her, and I thought for sure that I wanted to be a movie star, comedian, person like Carol Burnett. Yeah.
How far did you go with that?
Not very far. Never happened. I don't know how that would, but that was the first thing I ever remember thinking I would do.
Oh, well, that's exciting. It's an exciting dream. So, fast forwarding a bit, quite a bit, actually. When your third daughter Meg was born, actually, before we get to that, have you ever known anyone who experienced autism before your
No.
daughter Meg was?
Mm-mm. I did not know anyone who lived with autism themselves. I don't think I knew anybody who knew anybody with autism.
Well, so when Meg was born, kind of walk us through a little bit about what her first few years were like.
She well, it helped having had two kids, older children for my husband and me. So we kind of had, experienced that. We were older parents. I was 38 when Meg was born. And the other two girls were 6 and 8 years older. So, and I had babysat a lot when I was young and loved kids. I wanted to have 5 or 6 kids. So I kind of had a lot of experience with, typical child development without even realizing it. So when Meg came along, she was a very small baby, 4 pounds, 9 ounces, and which is not remarkable, really. And she gave us a real fit for the first couple months with colic, which is not fun at all. But again, commonplace. People get through it and it eventually goes away and there's usually no long-term effects. So she screamed 5 hours a night for about 6 or 7 weeks. And
as parents, how do you cope with that? I mean, it sounds so challenging.
I would be in the basement with her from about 8 o'clock on because Tim and the girls had to go to sleep. So they would go up onto the second floor and try to sleep at night. And I would go down 2 floors below in the basement so that they couldn't hear her, hopefully. And they would try to sleep. And it was right around the time she was born, August 10th, right before 9/11 happened in 2001. So I spent a lot of evenings with her screaming with the TV on, not the volume, of course, because I couldn't hear it, but I just would watch the scrolling of the updates of the dead bodies that they found and everything. And it was kind of a real bummer time for me. But that stopped eventually around 3 months. The crying got much less frequent and things seemed to take a more typical trajectory there for a while. And then she didn't reach her gross motor milestones like she probably should have. She didn't sit up till she was 9 months old, independently sit up. And then she didn't crawl till she was 11 months old. And when she did crawl, it wasn't kind of the alternative of the arms and legs. She would sit on her bottom and kind of one hand on the ground and scoot herself forward like a monkey almost, which was kind of interesting. And I found myself saying that phrase quite a few times over the next 2 years. As I observed her grow and develop and her behaviors, I would say, that's kind of interesting. And it was things like that. And then we started to notice some sensory, interesting things sensory-wise. Like I'd give her a bath and every time I took her out of the bath, she would scream. And I'd lay her down on the ground, on the tile floor of the bathroom, and she would kick her heels so hard in the tile ground, I thought for sure she'd shatter her heels. But she just kicked. And then she had a real attraction to metal, the metal parts of toys, or I would take her out in the evenings during the summer to water my flowers with me. And she followed me around and wanted so badly to get as close as she could to the cold water hose. And it didn't matter to her how cold that water was. It didn't deter her one bit, but she wanted that cold water coming out of the metal end of the hose. It was really attractive to her. So she had this oral fixation on things, particularly metal, which was very interesting. And she was very slow to develop any type of language. At her 18-month checkup, she still wasn't walking. And she had a couple babblings, like Baba for bottle and Barney, the show that she liked. She said Dada a little bit, but there was no functional language to speak of. Like she couldn't ask for things verbally, even with sounds. And but we were so preoccupied with her not walking that the doctor said, well, if she's not walking in a week, bring her back. So she started walking within a week. But again, I noticed once she started walking, she walked kind of around all the time, kind of oblivious to everything else that was going on. And she'd kind of rhythmically clap her hands like that. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, I was getting ready to go to work one morning. I worked part-time. And I said, well, here comes my autistic daughter. And I was just kind of somewhat joking. You know, I didn't know anything about autism, but the fact that she looked to be in her own world was obviously kind of concerning to me. And then she had additional like sensory things. Like I said, she would chew on my car keys, even after she had a full set of teeth, and on the chain link fences at my daughter's softball games.
That sounds so painful.
It was. I know. And the few words that she had and the few receptive communication things that she had, like, you know, point to your nose. She used to do this, and point to your hair. She'd go like that. Once she started walking, it took all her cognitive abilities to walk, and she stopped doing those other communicative things, which that was when I really became concerned, because I read an article in the local newspaper about autism, and it said, if at any time a child loses any developmental skills, that's a red flag. And she did lose those skills of making sounds and pointing, you know, responding to things that we had said, responding to her name. And she would even, you know, avert eye contact with me. I'd have her in the bathtub and, you know, want to sing a song with her, and she would look away, which is really just strange. So, you know, the combination of all these things were very concerning to me. And I Googled it and looked it up, and I was convinced that she had autism. Well, and I looked at a couple other things, because autism is so primarily diagnosed in males. To this day, it's still about a ratio of 4 to 1.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Male diagnosis, yes. So I thought, she's a girl. How could I, you know, what are the chances of, you know, I don't know anybody with autism, you know, she's a girl, that could it really be autism, you know? And it wasn't that common back then. It was probably 1 in 1,000 back in 20 years ago. But she had all the classic symptoms, really. So I took her to visit my sister, who was a speech therapist by trade. And I explained to my sister what I had been seeing, and my sister agreed with me. And she brought a friend of hers over who was, at the time, a diagnostician. So she knew that a lot of the behaviors Meg was exhibiting were red flags for autism. And she was very comforting to me and said, you know, this is what you need to do. Call your early childhood people in the public schools, and they will have some intervention and ways to evaluate her and see if that is in fact what you're dealing with, and ways to intervene and help her make progress. And so we took the educational identification route immediately. And then we also pursued a medical evaluation, which involves going to a neurologist. And those appointments are extremely hard to get into. We ended up going to not Rochester, which was closer, but Mankato, an hour and a half from here.
Oh wow.
And really, diagnosis at that point is the large part of it is observation of the child, but even more importantly is the input and observation that the parent gives and any other caregivers that care with the child. So we knew by 2 for sure that this is what we were dealing with. And it was overwhelming and devastating, because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to intervene, what help, what kind of progress we could expect, lifelong prognosis, or it was just scary and overwhelming. And for those first couple of years after that, even, it was more difficult because her challenges increased. With her inability to speak, she had a lot of behavior problems. She didn't deal well with transitions. Not a lot of things in the world made sense to her because of her lack of communicative understanding and ability to express herself, and her sensory issues. And it was a really rough couple of years for our family, to get, to digest everything we were dealing with and try to put together a plan to move forward, to give her the best possible chance at a happy, successful life while remaining intact and sane as a family, functioning, and everybody getting what they needed. And I know that there's a huge population of autistic adults out there that don't really appreciate stories like mine, because I'm emphasizing somewhat the difficulties and the challenges that it poses to a family, and the struggles that autism can create. But that's my reality. And I feel I have an obligation to share my experience to help other people. And I'm just being honest with what it was like for us. But fast forwarding to where we are now, it's gotten so much better. We've learned so much. She's made so much progress, and I've learned a ton in the meantime, that I now end up helping other people on the same journey.
So if I have plenty of questions, but and Tim's commenting from Pennsylvania, the great Tim Sohn, who's a great podcaster and just an amazing
Hi, Tim.
human being. He says, "Thank you for being honest and open-minded and sharing your story and perspectives." Thanks, Tim. You are a superstar, man. So before we go any further, what would you advise young parents who either have gotten the diagnosis for their child, or who are seeing the signs and starting to Google and pretty much know this is kind of the direction things are going?
Well, we had a very good experience in the public school system. And as you know, that varies from county to county, within a state, from state to state, and from region to region throughout our country. At the time, there was an extremely progressive, good early childhood autism program right in Austin, Minnesota. And unbeknownst to me, because my first reaction was, here we are in tiny Austin, rural Austin, Minnesota, population of 23,000 people. And I've said this before, what the hell am I going to do? Because we were 100 miles from Minneapolis, 45 miles from Rochester, any bigger area where I assumed the best services and support would be. But I was happy to be wrong.
So how did Austin happen to have a progressive program?
By the grace of God. I mean, there was a group of teachers at the time who had done research, had been given the freedom to pursue forming an autism program. It was kind of an up-and-comer at the time, and they had a director of special services then that said, we're going to be seeing more of this. Help us figure out how to do it and do it well. And there was a core team of women that did a little bit of research, put a program together that turned out to be the best thing for my daughter at the time. we were very, very fortunate.
That's amazing in your hometown of
Mm-hmm.
23,000.
I know. And I went into the meeting, having done research, on my own, and said, I think that she needs 40 hours a week of applied behavior analysis, which is a proven evidence-based method of intervention for young children with autism. And they didn't, dismiss me at all. They listened to what I had to say. They very carefully explained how they've put their program together, how they've looked at all the research, and that they have a combination program that includes this type of therapy, but it includes other types of therapies that are to treat the child more holistically. And that, if I am willing to give this a try, they're willing, if it doesn't see the progress we are looking at, they're willing to help me try other things. So I learned very quickly that they were extremely supportive of our situation and of all the research that I had done, but they also had put a lot of knowledge and expertise into this programming, and we saw very good results right away with her. And they were not only good with her, but they were very willing to teach me how we could implement some of these supports and interventions at home at the same time to help speed up her progress and development. And I took that and ran, because I had to feel like I was doing something to be helpful. So I learned from them. The first year that I had was in-home services, because in Minnesota, and it varies state to state, but their Birth to 3 program in Minnesota allows you in-home services for something such as autism. So they would come to my home 2 or 3 times a week and work with Meg. I had an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, and an autism teacher who I was able to observe and learn how to teach her right along with them, which was invaluable.
So Meg was 2 at this point, or was she 3?
She was 2.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And by the time she was 3, then she was in the school-based program for about 20 hours a week. I would drop her off at 8:45 in the morning and pick her up at 1 in the afternoon. And she got some pretty consistent, very targeted intervention, which was exactly what she needed. And she stayed in that early childhood autism room for till she was 6, for 4 years. So, and if you look at a lot of kiddos nowadays, especially during the pandemic, I mean, the services and diagnostic services and assessments have not been nearly what they should be. But for her to have started kindergarten, she already had 4 years of intervention, Jason. And a lot of these kids don't get flagged until kindergarten screening. So she benefited from so much foundational developmental influence that helped her be successful in a typical kindergarten environment. Our goal for those first 4 years were to get her kindergarten ready. I couldn't even look beyond kindergarten, because depending on how she responded to the treatments and the therapies, there was a good chance she would not have been able to attend a typical kindergarten. But she did. And that was a real pivotal point for us all to see her experience that. And then we started increasing our expectations again and, raised the bar for her based on her making that a successful kindergarten experience.
I'm getting such a team feeling here, like how good that your sister was a speech therapist and that, but her friend over and her friend knew what to do, and how good to have this program. And
a lot of things fell into place. You're exactly right. But I went after a lot of it too, Jason. I learned as much as I got this recommendation from Mitch Lepicello, has a practice up in Woodbury, Minnesota. and I follow his blog. And he said his recommendation to people that have a newly diagnosed family member with autism are two things: learn and act. Learn as much as you can about autism in general and how it presents and is affecting your own child, because it's very different how it presents in each individual. But learn as much as you can and act. Ask questions, seek out resources. How might this program be beneficial for her? If speech and occupational therapy were good 20 hours a week during school, could it be better for her if I supplemented with private speech and OT? I ended up doing that too. So she'd attend this program, and then 2 afternoons a week, I would take her to a private speech therapist and a private occupational therapist. The other thing that I learned from all my research was the individualized targeted intervention is very necessary in a one-on-one in a small environment to work on teaching them how to learn, but also don't limit them only to that. Put them in typical experiences, have them get some experiential, natural environment learning. So it was a big focus of mine to get Meg exposed as early as possible into typical environments where she could learn to practice some of these skills that she was learning in the controlled, autism specific environments. So I sought out a typical daycare for her to go to 1 afternoon a week. I sought out a typical preschool for her to attend, but I made sure that those environments were conducive to her being successful, because it's not good to make that decision if you're just sending them to any preschool. Because if they can't pay attention or they're just sitting in the corner, flapping their hands, they're not benefiting from the situation. So I had to make sure that the opportunities I found for her were appropriate for her to reach, the milestone goals we were working on at that time. So my best friend at the time was a preschool teacher. And she encouraged me to bring Meg. She said, bring her. She'll be fine. And I wasn't comfortable just bringing her. I hired a para to go into that classroom with Meg so that I wasn't overburdening my girlfriend who was the teacher. But at the same time, I was giving Meg that typical school experience. And so she had a typical daycare experience where she was exposed to peers. And how in a small setting like that, that's almost a precursor to kindergarten, because they have lunch at a table together and they do activities together in a daycare. And she learned, she had a hard time generalizing many skills when she was little. So if she pooped at home after she was potty trained, she would only poop at home. So we had to work on getting her to poop at the daycare, to poop at the preschool. And I remember this experience, I was getting ready to take her to Elaine's, the daycare. And I said, "Now, Meg, you haven't pooped today. Do you want to poop at home before you go to Elaine's?" And she said, "Oh, I poop at Elaine's." And I knew that was a huge milestone for us, that she had now the comfort and the familiarity and it was okay for her now to poop at the daycare. But
that's really it's a huge deal.
It was at the time. It was a huge deal.
Milestone at the time too.
At the time it was. You're exactly right.
Wow.
And yeah, and it leads me to one of the questions that you asked me to prepare for earlier. How do you, when you know someone's dealing with autism, how do you push them out of their comfort zone so that they can experience more and enjoy life and things without overwhelming them? And
it's a big question on my mind,
and it's a very good question, because people that are really affected by autism, like she was, they prefer the routine. They don't want anything to change. They want it to be the same every day, possibly wear the same clothes every day, do everything at the same time every day. But how do you grow and experience and enjoy what life has to offer if you're so engrossed in a rigid routine like that? So you do have to find a really happy balance of giving them enough of a routine and familiarity to comfort them, while at the same time exposing them to new things, but in a supported way. Let them know what to expect, how to cope with the change, and enjoy, give them what they need to be successful and enjoy that new experience, so that they'll be likely to want to do it again.
So this leads to a fast forward. So you put on summer camps for kids. I mean, one of the many things you do is you put on summer camps for kids who experience autism.
Right.
How do you like these kids come in that maybe they don't know you, it's a new routine? How do you help them be comfortable and be challenged
In the
in this
community of Austin,
environment?
our small community is very conducive to pulling that off, because I don't personally run the camps myself. I helped the first year design and implement the very first one, but that was in 2010. But our camps are designed, the model we use for our camps, we borrowed from the Autism Society of Minnesota. So we knew that we had the structure that would be successful for people with autism. So we followed that model, and then we have staff people that are employed by our public school system. So they have, not only do they have knowledge and experience of working with youth with autism, but they often are some of the similar teachers that these kids have. So they have a combination of something new in the camp and the environment at the Hormel home, but they have a familiar face and a familiar, method of instruction. So the supports that they have at school, like visual schedules, the opportunity for sensory breaks, very clear, concise, concrete instruction, all of that is replicated at the camps.
So that is the newness of the camp and some of the activities and the location, but then there's also this continuity between school and
continuity of method of instruction, continuity of staff, the terminology they use to communicate with the kids is consistent. And the nice thing about the camps too is we get profiles on all the campers that are going to attend, and we try to gear portions of the day to their interests. Because
so what's an example? I mean, not naming names, but what's an example of gearing something to someone's interest?
Oh, well, my daughter, for example, was really into music. So when she went to Circle of Friends camp on the first day, she could choose for that day which special interest area she wanted to go to. And it might be music and theater, which she often chose, or it could be building and construction, which might be Legos and trains and things like that. And it might be arts and crafts, where they, painted and did things with Play-Doh and things like that. So when the campers fill out their information packet, we find out what the interests of these kids are, kind of what makes them tick. And because that's how they have fun, and they're more likely to learn and be able to overcome some of these challenges if they're in social challenges and communication challenges, if they're in an environment that they're motivated by. So,
I think that's for all humans.
It is.
We're more likely
definitely
to learn if we're having fun.
Right. So that is how the camps are successful, really. And the question that was posed to me when I first got involved was, is there a camp in town or an activity in town that your daughter can participate in having autism? And she was 6 at the time. And I said, well, really not. I mean, if I were to sign her up for a swimming lesson or a soccer team, I couldn't just drop her off and think that she's going to be successful and have a good time. I had to prep the staff that was going to work with her on her unique needs with autism. I'd have to prep her as to what to expect. Communicative wise, sensory wise, that often would involve writing her like a social narrative of what to expect, and all that
Would
stuff.
you say briefly what a social narrative
Sure. It is, it's called a social narrative or a social story, and it explains in words and pictures what to expect in a social situation, what you can expect as the participant, but what is expected of you. So we do that for these kids before they go to camp. We'd say circle of friends lasts 5 days from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. On each day, you will have an opportunity to prepare a snack. Then they give you a schedule for each day. And they say that you can make a choice. You have to do one of the activities, but you get to choose which activity you want to do. So they know what to expect in that situation. I'll give you a good example of when Meg was in first grade. She got invited to a birthday party at the Holiday Inn in Austin, and it was a swimming party. And fortunately, she had been through swimming lessons and was a pretty good swimmer at that point. But I called the mother ahead of time and I said, my daughter has autism. These are some things that will be helpful for me to know to prepare her to be successful at this birthday party. Do you know, what are you going to do first? Are you going to swim? What's your schedule of events? And the woman said, well, we're going to swim for a while. Then we're going to have walking tacos. And then we're going to open gifts. And then the kids will go home. And I said, okay, that really helps me. And then I was in the process of making this social story for Meg. I had a picture of the Holiday Inn pool. I said the party was would start at 1 o'clock. It would be finished at 4 o'clock. And that I was Googling images for walking tacos to put in the story. And she said, what's that, Mom? And I said, oh, that's a walking taco. And I thought, perfect. I thought it was going to be a good thing for her to know ahead of time because she eats walking tacos at school. And I thought, well, this is going to be, this will make her happy. And she said, oh, I don't want a walking taco at the party. And I said, you don't? She goes, no. And I said, oh, well, then you can. And I wrote this right in the narrative. I said, they're going to serve walking tacos for lunch. And if you don't want a walking taco, you can say, no, thanks. I'll just have the bag of Doritos. So what do you think she did when she went to that party? It was time to eat. She walked into the hotel room where they had the taco bar all laid out. And I was still there. I, hung around for the party. And she walked in there and she looked around and they said, Meg, would you like a walking taco? And she said, no, thanks. I'll just have the Dorito chips.
And that's another, talk about another huge milestone.
It was a huge success because had I not prepared her, she might, with the skill level she had and her ability to communicate, she might have just said, oh, I don't want a walking taco, and made a kind of a disgusting face and looked around for something else to eat. It would have made the host uncomfortable. It would have been embarrassing for her socially. And we alleviated that by this social narrative, by giving her what to expect in the situation and what is expected of her.
So when parenting a child with autism, there's a lot of proactivity involved.
Absolutely. I remember presenting years ago and a special ed teacher came up to me afterwards and she said, the most powerful thing that you told me, Mary, that you learned was to observe the child, know your child, and you become the eyes and ears and the mind of your child before a situation. Okay, this is what's going to go on. How is she going to perceive that? How will she understand that terminology, or do I have to translate that to more concrete language for her? Will she like going to a bridal shower? I made a whole story for her about that because if I tell her we're going to a bridal shower, she's going to think we're all going to jump in a shower and take, a shower.
And that's kind of good to clarify beforehand.
Right, right.
So will you talk a little bit about the variety of how kids and adults experience autism?
Oh, it's as varied as the stars in the sky. However, the common thread,
So poetic.
well, but the common thread through all of it, Jason, I mean, if it's so diverse, how do you know that it's autism, right? I mean, the common thread through all of the autistic experience tends to be it's a neurological processing difference. So every aspect of their life is experienced differently than yours and mine if you don't have an autistic brain. Primarily areas of social understanding, social communication, communication in general, and the sensory information. When you have differences, very profound differences in those three areas, that is how it's identified as an autistic brain. And I mean, you can see it on an MRI. When you look at an MRI of a person that is socially interacting, it lights up differently than a typical person that may be doing the same social interaction. There's different parts of the brain are affected. Well, I lost my train of thought here. How the varied impacts. I mean, so communication can be affected so much in a person on the spectrum that they can't verbally communicate at all. The brain is not making the proper connectivity to make the motor sounds come out of the mouth. And that's not saying there isn't any intelligence in there. A lot of these people communicate with an alternative or augmentative communicative device, like an iPad, like a computer, or they exchange pictures or point to pictures to tell you what they're trying to communicate. But motor-wise, they cannot produce the sounds and speak vocally. All the way to the opposite end of someone who's extremely verbose and talks like an encyclopedia almost, but might lack the reciprocity, the social understanding that conversation is a dance. And I make a comment and give you information, but I also need to get information from you. And I need to gauge ongoing in the conversation. Are you still interested in what I'm saying? Is it a reciprocal conversation, or am I just talking at you and giving you information? That can be hard to decipher for someone with the autistic neurology.
And that, I imagine that can be really hard to teach.
Yes.
Teach too.
Mm-hmm. But most of these things are very teachable if you can put them in concrete terms. For example, during some of Meg's speech therapy sessions, they used to, count the number of exchanges that she would have in a conversation to see if she was progressing at conversation ability, and staying on the topic, versus talking about something randomly. And again, there are these really hardcore. The autism community can be very divided at times because there's a fine line between teaching and supporting and intervening to help someone be successful and understood in a typical social situation. But there's this concern that you're changing the person, that you're not allowing them to be their true self. And it can be a real conundrum because sometimes allowing people to be their true self, I refer to, would Meg still be standing in the corner slapping her hands in her own little world had we not done anything? Would she ever have developed language? Would she? And I mean, obviously, my hope is for her to have a successful, fulfilling, happy life. And that's going to mean what she wants and what makes her happy, not what I want for her. And that can be really hard as a parent. But you do have to take the input I have to take the input from my daughter into consideration. And she's a, bottom line, she's a 20-year-old girl in many ways, a typical 20-year-old girl. She doesn't necessarily want to pursue what she's good at. And I try to kind of push her in the direction of what she's good at because it makes sense, but that's not what she wants to do right now. But she's only 20. So she has experienced a lot of different things in her 20 years. And we're just working to give her the foundation so that she can be independent and continue to have varied experiences so that she can end up where she wants to be as an adult.
In a way, it's a question all parents have. How much do I guide my child, and how much do I let them be?
Right.
But like so many things, it's probably more challenging in some respects when a kid has autism.
Yeah. Because the world, it's much better than it was 20, 30 years ago, but it's not really geared towards how they think. And that takes, coaching and we need this type of mind. I mean, they're so innovative and have such, most of the time, generally speaking, such great memories, such attention to detail, very good problem solvers, because they have suffered such a different perspective and process things differently. And we need that in the whole grand mix of society. And what's the comparison I like to, like the ecosystem in the ocean,
Beautiful.
They need to be part of our ecosystem for sure.
So what can we do to encourage people with autism to share their perspective more in situations that maybe change policy or help innovate an idea?
Well, one thing that I'm working on right now, and I try to take the opportunities in my own front yard and work from there. Right now, I'm helping lead the charge at our local community college to create and implement a support program called Spectrum Scholars for young people who have graduated high school, have the academic ability, and can pass the tests they need to be enrolled at the community college. But so oftentimes, that's not enough to be successful. So much of what determines success in college for an autistic person is not your grades. It's whether you've held a job, how your independent skills are, how well you are at self-advocating, your organization skills. All those factors weigh much more heavily on your success at college than your actual grades do. So I'm working to develop a program that once these students got accepted at Riverland, they could get some individualized attention and supports to help them in those key areas that help them transition successfully to that college environment, and also help them successfully finish with a degree in either a trade or an associate degree, or with enough to go on to a 4-year college. But that is how, in order to implement that, it takes a culture change. A lot of these professors don't understand, why do I need to do things differently for these students? And it impacts them differently in the cafeteria, in the disciplinary action, in admissions, in housing, all of these. So right now we're at the the stage where we're doing a lot of professional development and informing and building understanding, which will help the program be much better received. And that's how we're going to help people on the autism spectrum be more readily included in our society. It takes change on both sides. We need to understand how their brain works, just like they need to understand how our world is built and how.
So it's a mutual thing.
Definitely. Right.
We have Bill Blair for tuning in. Thanks, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Bill says trade degree and associate degree are great. That's what I have.
Well, and what's so nice too is autistics learn better hands-on. I mean, you can say all day you do this, and this, but it's so much easier to learn it with your hands on the job. So they tend to be more successful in some of those trade areas, which we so badly need skilled employees nowadays.
And it's a great work, Mary. Speaking of your great work, will you talk a little about peer power partners?
I certainly will, yes. Way back in 2013, this was before I was even in a paid position. I volunteered for a long time in our community, and I knew that even though my daughter was making great strides academically and in school and in its extracurricular activities, that an ongoing challenge for her was going to be friendships and peers understanding her differences and things like that. And I had done a little research on my own, but my sister sent me an article about an organization in Wisconsin. And I made it a mission of mine to create a program here in our community that would help build understanding and knowledge about not only autism, but youth with with a variety of disabilities. So in 2013, I helped launch the Peer Power Partners mentoring program, which excuse me, pairs students with disabilities with same-aged peers in the school day. So these students get together twice a month for 20 to 40 minutes at a crack, and they do a little bit of education on disabilities. A student might share about his epilepsy or might share about I know there's a student at the middle school who shares about his spina bifida. And so they learn about challenges that they have, but they also learn what they have in common. And that we all want to have friendships and be included, and we all have strengths. So these kids at a very young level are learning about differences and similarities and how to be accepting and understanding and things like that. And it's been going on since 2013, and now it's in grades 5 through 12 in our whole school system. And they meet a couple times a week. And we try to have a couple key activities where we take them out of school into the community to practice some of the relationship building that they are learning during these sessions. So they might go to a hockey game together. And this spring, I've got a group of them that are going to go canoeing down the river, like, teams in a canoe and work together and
cool.
And things like that. They like to go bowling, and bowling's a perfect exercise for that because, you break up into groups of 5 and you take turns, hitting the ball, and you have the opportunity to be in a small group with mentors and mentees. And it's really a great program. I don't spend as much time anymore on that program. I would like to be more hands-on with that, but I've got so many other responsibilities now that I have to depend on my coordinators in the schools, and they do a great job. But I'm really proud of that program.
It gives me goosebumps. When Meg was young, you guys benefited hugely from there being the early childhood programs. in the Austin schools, and since that time you've devoted so much of your energy to creating programs like Peer Power Partners and summer camps and Spectrum
Right.
Scholars, which helps um students with autism, but also it helps their families so much to
Right.
have
And it
solutions.
contributes to, improving our community. We're adding another
Mm,
dimension of richness and humanity, recognized humanity differences in our community. And yeah, and another thing that we have that you mentioned in your preliminary article was the Autism Friendly Austin initiative, which was another level of impact that we wanted to make in the community, because I go out into businesses and organizations and present to them on what autism is, how it affects customers, how it affects potential employees, how we can be more understanding and accommodating. Um, so we educate the peers, we provide educational and recreational opportunities for the autistics themselves, and educational opportunities for families. And
mm.
we're really trying to permeate the whole community on many different levels, and it's a huge point of difference for the Austin community.
And you've even gotten written up in the Washington Post
Yeah, that was a
because it
couple of years
is
ago.
such a point of difference.
Hmm. Yeah.
How did you get the briefly? How did you get the idea to become this active and champion these innovative solutions?
I don't know. I it kind of just came naturally with, I guess, my personality, Jason. I I have boundless energy and an extremely positive attitude. Usually, I come by that naturally. And my experience prior to having children was I was a marketing manager at Hormel,
Mm,
and that was a real all encompassing job where I had to manage, the packaging, the production of the product, the sales force, and making a profit
wow,
on the
wow.
bottom line profit on a product line. And so I had that experience of juggling all these different balls to make a successful product, and uh, and that experience really came in handy when I was managing this autism with my child, because it took seeking out the resources and
Mm,
learning as much as I could about that, seeking out the resources available to her. How did it affect her, and how could I put all these resources into place to help make her the best,
mm,
have the best outcome? And when things came together and I found that I was successful and she was successful at these things, I wanted to share it with other people because I knew how overwhelming it can be.
mm,
And many
mm,
families have two parents working, at least two jobs. And I had the luxury of staying at home for a while with my kids,
mm.
and this totally consumed me. So it one thing led to another after volunteering for several years. And we came up with this idea of the Autism Friendly Austin initiative. I said, well, I think it's a great idea, but you need someone who's that's their focus, and um, Meg at the time was in high school, and I figured I could devote, and my other two were out of the house, and I could devote more time to that. And now she is at a program at the University of Iowa, so she's there full time. And that's when things really got crazy, because the more time I have, the more work I do. So I'm really in over my head at this point. Um, so I know I'm going to have to rein it in here because she only has 2 more years left at that school, and we're going to have to figure out the next steps for her after that.
So you said something in passing that way, which is like the grand finale. So I don't want to miss it. where did you say Meg was now?
She attends the University of Iowa.
Did you say the University of Iowa?
Yep.
The University of Iowa. From clapping hands when she was younger to
Yeah.
attending the University of Iowa. The University of Iowa.
She's in a program called REACH, Realizing Educational and Career Hopes. It is a very unique, well-developed program for students with developmental and intellectual disabilities. It's very inclusive. She took a class last semester, an improv class, and then this semester she's taking basic acting. And her core curriculum is very life skill oriented. Each semester she has an internship. So the last 2 semesters she's done an internship at Petland in Iowa City. So she takes public transportation. She takes the transportation to her job. She works on budgeting. She lives in a dorm with a roommate who is also in the REACH program. And she's got the opportunity to go to the Big Ten basketball games, football games. She can join traditional college clubs. She dabbled a little bit in the anime club one semester. And she actually put on part of their curriculum for these kids is social interaction opportunities. So they have opportunities each week to pick and choose what they want to participate in. And that can be a little hard for her because she's so exhausted from the day taxes her a lot. All the social interaction of being in class, being at her internship, taking a traditional class with typical kids, and she works on her script with her partner in that acting class. She's fried after the long day. But she did go to a hockey game, a Hawkeye hockey game with her mentor. She's got a peer mentor. And
goosebumps.
Yeah. She's in the right place for her right now, Jason. We are very, very fortunate.
So just a few more quick questions. We're at time. Okay, a few more quick questions. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So this just came to me. What would you say about the human potential that we all have within us, from seeing Meg's journey from being 1 and 2 to where she is now?
I can't overestimate the need for assuming competence and providing opportunities. And so often I say, there's an acronym I have that are so key to helping anybody reach their potential, but it's been really key for me in helping her, has been motivation. I had to work at times. I remember praying for her to have something that was motivating to her, because I could see how critical that was for to be a catalyst for progress, was to have something that motivated her. And we found
M is motivation.
And then the opportunity. Because, you can be motivated to play an instrument and be in the band, but if you don't have that opportunity, if your school doesn't have a band program, that's kind of hard. So motivation, the appropriate opportunity, and the right support, and the quality instruction. And when those 4 factors are in place, it's unlimited, the potential for people.
Amazing. And that's so inspiring, because it's so easy for any of us to get stuck in the ruts of, I can't do it, the people around me can't do it. And
well, and
that's
two,
just
how,
not true.
from a parent perspective, I thought she would I thought she would be in dance. I mean, she likes music, she likes wearing the tutu. I thought she would be a dancer. And I remember Meg saying to me, again, there was nothing that I could see motivated her. And I wanted to get her into swimming lessons for safety, number one. And it was a good sensory thing, safety, sensory, and it's social. So we started her in swimming lessons, and my gosh, the growth that she had just in going to swimming lessons at the Y. She learned that, how to swim. It was good socially for her. She practiced independent showering with a helper that I sent her with afterwards. So there were all these grand things. And then in my mind, I thought, okay, perfect. When she goes to the middle school, then she'll be on the swim team, because I know some girls that she's friendly with that, are nice to her, that are on the swim team. So, and she knows how to swim, so she can be on the swim team when she goes to middle school. Well, all of a sudden she said to me, she goes, Mom, don't react, which she'll often say to me, don't react, but I don't think I want to be in swimming anymore. And I said, oh, right. Well, how about dance? I think I want to be in dance. And I thought, we tried dance, three different times we tried it. It was a disaster. So then my plan fell apart, but it's not necessarily my plan. And I think that is so important to remember in parenting any child, but especially with her. I learned over the years that when she doesn't speak very much, I mean, really emphatically about things like that. So when she does make the effort to make that point to me, I listen, because I said, if you want to be in dance, you can be in dance. And I remember signing her up, and I thought, oh, is she going to even want to compete? And she went from being in a dance class in fifth grade, or second half of fifth grade, just a part-time dance class. And then she wanted to be on the dance team in the high school. And then that's a whole nother kettle of fish, being on the dance team. I mean, it's competitive. It's, the social dynamics of high school girls and all that stuff. But my God, she was motivated, Jason. So we did private lessons with her, because she said she had practiced and she kicked her leg up 3 times in a row, and she couldn't figure out why she didn't make the varsity team. So I had to impress on her what really practicing was. And I did private lessons with her with the captain of the dance team, one-on-one. And that girl worked her to a pulp. She'd come home dripping and sweating. But by her senior year, she made the varsity dance team. So, but she had the motivation, and I finagled the opportunity for her to learn what she needed to learn. And then the rest of it came. But here I had the plan for her to be on the swim team, because that was, how she had gotten so far. Well, she completely switched gears on me. And,
she came home surprise.
So then when she was going to Iowa, I thought, well, she probably wasn't going to be on the dance team at Iowa, but what about like a dance class, or maybe a manager of the dance team? No, I'm not doing that. She didn't want to do anything related. And sometimes she gets compartmentalized, like that was high school and now this is college. So she's not going to carry some of those things over. And she plays the trumpet brilliantly too. And I wanted her to maybe try out for the Hawkeye marching band. No interest. But it's not for me to say.
No, so no, she's into acting and improv, huh?
She would love to be a voiceover actor. And this is very interesting. When I said to her, and I recommend this to all parents, observe what they do, but also ask them what makes you think, I said, what is it about voice acting that appeals to you? And she said, well, I can talk and sing and nobody can see me. Because there's that social anxiety piece about, performing in front of people when you're seen. That takes the anxiety to a whole new level than when you're just performing behind a screen. And I explained to her that, good prep for voiceover acting is improv classes and acting classes. And I don't know if that will come true for her, but she's exploring a new thing in college. And that's really good.
So final two quick questions. So I talk about imperfect best, and what it means to me is we have a vision of our best and go for it. But when imperfections come up, as they will, we use that as inspiration to move forward instead of to stop. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
I think what I've done for the last 30 years raising these girls. You know, kids they don't come with a manual, and you have to let go of the preconceived notion of what you think they should. I mean, obviously within reason, for safety and going to school and age appropriate development. But I mean, it turned out to be the perfect plan for us. I just didn't at first recognize it, I mean, and I had to do what my gut told me to do with her. There's no perfect way to manage it. And I think you have to accept that too. You have to let a lot go and focus on what really matters. And you're bound to have something imperfect, because it was meant to be that way. I mean, if you look at how God created us, we're all flawed. And so is the world. So, but we have the freedom to make the best choices that we think we can within that imperfection, to strive towards what we think God wants us to do.
Beautiful. Lastly, if someone wants to know more about the work you're involved with, or connect, what's the best way for them to do that? Is there a website they can go to?
Sure. My email address is autism@hormelhistorichome.org. And the website that explains our camps and a lot of the outreach that we do is www.hormelhistorichome.org. And there's an autism programming tab.
So did I get one of them right here?
Autism@hormelhistorichome.org. Yep, that's right.
So, and then if you want to go to the website, just shorten that and take autism off and do the website part.
That's right.
So, your family's journey has been inspiring. What Meg's accomplished in her life is deeply inspiring, and she's a role model for other families and other young people with autism, and in the work you've created to pay it forward in the Austin community is deeply inspiring, and that's just going to keep rippling out. I envision to impact more and more people in Austin and in other places. So thank
I hope so too. Thank you, Jason.
You do, Mary.
Thank you so much, and it was so great to see you again. And do your listeners know that that's how we met? That you came and did a presentation for Peer Power Partners back in, I think it was 2018 or 17?
Maybe 18.
Was it 18?
My listeners don't know that. It was great though. it was so fun speaking to all those students of
Yeah,
various
they
grades.
loved it. They loved it.
Mm,
Thank you so much, Jason.
yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your time. And
You bet.
oh my, isn't she inspiring? Isn't her family story and how and I love that how we can find solutions to really complex things and can thrive and there's challenges, but there's also adaptations and it takes patience and it takes a team and just so great. So next week I have a special guest, and not the guest that I was scheduled to have because he's having surgery, so I don't have a banner for you. But next week Vicky Stewart will be on, and so tune in for her story and thanks so much for tuning in this week and just for being you. See you soon.